brand new information for you. Couple reminders. There we go. So we have an RFP job aid update. Just a short little thing that someone brought up to me. So we'll talk about that update. Reminder, how to confirm if a vendor submitted pricing on an RFP. We had a question, actually a couple questions come up last week, and I figured, you know what, it may be a good time to just go back and confirm. Because remember, when you do a pricing, you have the two separate bids on an RFP. You do not actually open that bid to see the pricing. However, there is a way to confirm whether a vendor submitted a quote to that pricing bid. So we'll walk through that again. Tomorrow we have our monthly bid buy training, our all-day training for new users or anybody that would like a refresher on the bid buy system. Then Thursday we will have another installment of our bid buy practice sessions, which is a little more informal, just allows us to get together as a follow-up to the other more formal trainings, and we can walk through examples and those sorts of things. Then our fun fact of the day and quote of the day. So first up, job aid update, small tweak to the RFP technical. So this will be our first job aid addition or update in fiscal year 22. So that's exciting. So our first one that'll actually say 22.1 at the bottom. The questions tab. So this was brought up. So shout out to Gene Sandstrom. Thanks for bringing this to my attention. So remember, on an RFP, you have the technical proposal only, and then you also have the other cloned bid, which is the pricing only. However, so you're going to have to go in and create a quote for that vendor once you have the pricing is opened. So once the pricing is open, you have to go in and do all the rest of the activity on the technical bid, right? So I think we're all square away on that. However, since we have that mandatory question on the RFP, you'll actually have to go in and select yes on the questions tab. So you can see what was added here at the bottom. So this is the bid tab of the technical bid when you're going in and creating that quote after pricing has been opened. So that mandatory question, as soon as you create the quote, you'll see that there's a red validation error at the top. Like, I think one of the errors immediately pops up that is the terms and conditions that you have to acknowledge, which we already have that taken care of in the job aid, but we didn't have this questions tab. So pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Probably most of you guys that have done it just selected yes anyway, but now we do have the job aid updated. I wasn't able to post that this morning prior to, so the first thing I do after we're done here today is I'll go out and add 22.1 to our job aids. Okay, pretty straightforward. Let me make sure I'm not missing any. Pull up my chat box there, yeah. All right, pretty straightforward there. If you have any questions, always let me know. Okay, so now we're going to walk through how to confirm if a vendor submitted pricing on an RFP. Again, like we talked about, you're going to have that technical bid, and then you also have the pricing bid. We never, ever, 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 ever want to open that pricing bid, right, prior to going through all the evaluations of the technical proposals. But you still need to confirm whether they did submit. So the question came up, actually, two different people came up. So you know what, anytime that happens, we want to go and touch base on it. Because again, it might be one of those things where you hadn't done an RFP at that time. And it's one of those things where if you haven't done one, maybe it makes sense to you at the time when we walk through something like this, but then a few months later down the road, you actually do need to confirm this, and you go, all right, what did that Dave guy say? So what we're going to do is you go to the bidders tab of the pricing bid. Again, this is still in sent status, and I'm going to jump out and walk through it on the actual system, but I wanted to have a slide that showed the screenshot. So you're going to access that pricing only bid. You'll go to the bidders tab and then the quote activity sub tab, which is right below it. And then you can cross-reference that from the vendors that submitted to the technical only bid. So let's walk out here real quick and just show you exactly what's going on there. So I'm in bid buy here. I just pulled up an older one that's in open status. I go to the bidders tab. And then, so it starts me on the general tab, right? And you can see here on the right-hand side where it says responded, So this list on the general tab, right, we're over here in the general tab on the left-hand side, only shows all those vendors that were on the bidders list when it was originally sent out. But of course, we know that vendors maybe aren't in bid by and they hear about the solicitation, or for any number of reasons. Maybe they weren't selected for all the NIGP codes that maybe they should be. We run into that too. Either way, they're allowed to respond to the solicitation, but they weren't on this list. So real quick, just for a quick reference, let's scroll down to the bottom and see how many vendors we have on this list. You can see that there's 63. Okay, now I'm going to go to that quote activity subtab. So I select that. You can see that now there's 64. So automatically that tells me that one vendor submitted that wasn't on the original bidders list. So what you can do is scroll down to the bottom. You can see the vendors also on the left-hand side, that vendor number. So on that slide where I talked about the cross-referencing, you can just maybe cross-reference, because essentially that's what you're doing, right? If they had to submit to the technical proposal, they also needed to submit to the pricing proposal. So you could just whatever your workflow works best for you is have those vendor numbers for the ones that submitted to the technical, and you can cross-reference to make sure that they submitted to the pricing. But having the extra vendor there on this list tells me that there was a vendor that did submit. And so a lot of times in the case where, we'll see if this is the case here, a lot of times they're added at the very end, so they just got added into bid by. So it's at the very end. That's not the case here though. Either way, there was one vendor that would have been added on this list. Either way, you just are looking on the right-hand side to confirm this responded column there, and it would say yes. So any of your vendors that submitted to your technical proposal, you would then come over here and you could say, okay, well, vendor 15325, it makes it a little easier when you have a lot of those procurements that have hundreds of vendors. If you don't have that many vendors, it's a little bit different because you don't have as many of those pages. But of course, we see some of these RFPs that you could have 500 vendors and there's a lot of different pages. There could be 10 different pages or 20 different pages of vendors. And so that's a quick way to confirm your vendors if they submitted. Let's see, we got a question here. I just see a question mark. So maybe, oh, can you show this again, please? Sure, yeah. Okay, so I'm going back to the summary tab of the pricing only. And again, it's on that slide too. So if I'm going to the bidders tab, and then there's a quote activity sub tab. Quote activity sub tab. And then on the right-hand side, you see responded. So potentially you could be in a situation where you just go to the bidders tab and maybe there were only 2 vendors that responded to the technical, and maybe they're on this list too. It's just the only way to confirm everything that was submitted is by going to the quote activity, because again, the difference between this general tab, bidders tab, and the quote activity is that in the quote activity, you could have a vendor that wasn't on the original bidders list, but then gets registered into bid by and then submits. Okay, and again, if I go back to the slides, you'll see on our slide that you access the pricing only bid, you go to the bidders tab, quote activity sub tab, and then you can see all the vendors that submitted. It just makes sense to me that you would, since if they only submitted to the pricing but did not submit to the technical, they're going to be deemed non-responsive. But essentially you'd be working, you have a handful of vendors that submitted to your technical proposal, you're going to be looking for those handful of vendors on that pricing only bid. Again, I can't stress this enough. Remember, we're not opening that bid at all, right? So when I went back to in bid by, this is technically in open status just because we're looking back on a really old one from last year. But this bid, if you're looking at a current one, it would still be in sent status. So you're not opening the bid. However, you're able to confirm that they did submit. Because let's say if you don't find those vendors, what essentially what we're avoiding here is having to go through the whole evaluation process if they didn't submit. This would be very similar to if let's think about it a year and a half ago, 2 years ago in the paper world, if a vendor didn't submit their pricing packet, right, then you wouldn't evaluate their technical either. So that's another way to think of these things. Okay, let's go back to our slides here. So our next installment of our monthly bid buy training will be tomorrow, August 11th. It is every second Wednesday of each month. Our agenda hasn't changed much. We did bump back the release off master training a half hour as that small purchase over $10,000 was extending a little bit more, and then we were having to bump that back anyway. So the same agenda. It is the same training that we've done for a while now. However, we do have the 3 p.m. start time for the release off master training. So this is any new folks that need access to bid buy, you need to go through this training. Also, it's free to anybody. It's no pre-registration is required. If you need a refresher, maybe you've gone through the system or you've gone through the training and you guys are working in the system, but maybe you haven't done a small purchase under 10 or a small purchase over 10 in a while and you want a quick refresher. So that's no issue there. But let's see, so 9 a.m. we do have our overview, general navigation. We'll take a break. 10:15 we'll do small purchase under 10, break for lunch, come back at 1, do small purchase over 10, and then at 3 p.m. we'll do the release off master. Okay, and then Thursday we'll have another optional training. This is a fairly new offering we've done it the last couple months called Bid Buy Practice Sessions. This will be the second and third Thursday of each month. So in this case, it'll be this Thursday, so it'll be the day after you go through the full day training. This is really just going to be more informal. It's a lot more back and forth. If someone comes with an example, we'll walk through that example for them, or maybe we can provide an example. It's more collaborative. Asks for more, it allows you guys to ask more specific questions once you've gone through the full day training the day before. But also we had some feedback that doing a practice session the day right after a person kind of being away from all their other duties as a part of that bid buy training wasn't perfect, wasn't optimal. They would like to do it the next week. So we've offered that third Thursday as well. So next Thursday, we'll also have a practice session. You don't have to attend the monthly training to attend the practice session. Again, it really is just an offering for anybody that wants to join us to practice on your own. Links are in the training center right here. If you click that, it'll take you. We'll have 2 separate links. So the second Thursday, excuse me, is a different link than the third Thursday. I'm seeing a question here. Sorry, I missed this earlier. Does that still hold true? We should not evaluate the technical if the bidder's quote activity doesn't indicate that a quote was submitted for a vendor who did submit a technical proposal. That's the way I understand it. I would confirm with your SPO. Again, it goes back to the kind of in the paper world. If you didn't submit pricing, you wouldn't evaluate the technical. Maybe there's some additional confirmation that might be needed. If maybe a vendor can provide confirmation that they did submit, or you could work with state user, there could be something on the back end. But if again, you wouldn't evaluate a technical proposal if pricing was not submitted. So, and we can talk more about that too if you have a specific question or a specific scenario. But I would point you to your SPO first. Okay, and then our same slides where you can find the Training Tuesday and the Bid Buy training links. We keep that up there each week. And then our fun fact of the day, I thought this was really weird. August 10th seems like a weird day for National S'mores Day, but you know what? There's never a bad day for s'mores. So I always think of that as I figured that'd be some day in October or something, but you know what? We'll take it. We'll take it. And then our quote of the day from James Clear, different meanings can be assigned to the same events. Look for evidence of how the world is encouraging you, and you'll find it. Look for evidence of how the world is burdening you, and you'll also find it. Choose an explanation that empowers you. I love that. I love James Clear. I'm a big fan of his, and that got me thinking. So we got a twofer today. That was very. It got me thinking about the Henry Ford quote that if you think you can do something or you think you can't do something, you're right. I love that. All right. All right. Not seeing any other questions. Have a great rest of your week. Of course, the recording will be posted per usual, and we'll see some of you tomorrow on the Bid Buy training or Thursday. And if not, we'll see you next Tuesday. Thank you, guys.